Welcome back to Thompson's Coins. Today we're taking a look at a very rare and valuable 20-cent coin that you might find in your change, but probably not. Today we are taking a look at the Wavy baseline 20-cent piece from 1966. I think this is a really interesting coin, and it sort of goes hand in hand with the $1 mule from 2000. And this is, I guess, once you start to look into era and variety collecting, this is probably the next coin that you'll come in contact with. If you have purchased a mule or you've taken up an interest in that with all the news and media hype surrounding it, once you start to delve a little deeper, this is the next logical coin that you will come across. Today I have a few interesting examples of it. I've got one really nice one that's been slabbed by PCGS and another one that's been heavily circulated and seen some wear and tear. Let's take a closer look. 1966 must have been an absolutely fascinating period to have lived through, and I often have lengthy conversations with people who come into the shop who lived through that period, because transitioning to a totally new system of currency, particularly one as confusing as the pre-decimal system, I'm talking, for those that are unfamiliar, there were 12 pennies in a shilling, 20 shillings in a pound, so 240 pennies in a pound, and you had to do all of your calculations and your shopping based on that system. So you had to have your head around that system. Not only that, you then had to do conversions into the decimal system. And I think I've highlighted it in the past. I had some interesting pamphlets that were distributed to all households around Australia to assist with that transition. And there were even hotlines set up where people could phone through and ask all of their, burning questions about how to convert their pre-decimal currency into this new decimal system. And even thinking about cash registers back then, because that predated credit cards. You didn't simply have, a tap and go option. You actually had to physically handle the cash and do the conversions on the spot. So I suppose places must have had maybe two registers, one with the pounds, shillings and pence, and another one set up with the new decimal system, which must have made bookkeeping an absolute nightmare. So a very interesting period, and if you did live through that and have some interesting stories to share, please let me know in the comments, because I often have a chuckle at how absolutely confusing that must have been, but I like to think that it was a good decision and that the decimal system is far more accessible and easier to get your head around. So probably the most famous, well-known coin from the period of 1966 is the 50-cent piece. This one is, of course, the round 50-cent piece, which was produced using 80% silver. And it was very shortly thereafter that it became apparent that the silver content was actually worth more than 50 cents. So there were stories of people rushing into the bank, loading up bank bags with these 50-cent pieces, and then promptly depositing them into their safety deposit boxes, only to see the silver price continue to appreciate. And they actually made a very healthy profit on, simply withdrawing the new 50-cent pieces. So understandably, it was a 1 year only type. So a lot of people, when they think about the transition to decimal currency, think about the round 50-cent piece being 80% silver. But the coin we're looking at today is actually the 20-cent piece. And I guess you can also see how, particularly if you had any kind of vision impairment, or just in general, it was pretty easy to mistake the 20 cent for the 50 cent. So I think that design element was also part of the reason why they shifted to a dodecagon shape, which is I think it's a 10-sided shape that we now have for the 50 cent piece. But let's continue. Why is this particular coin so much more valuable than your ordinary 20 cent piece? The reason is there is a small variation in the design, and this appears on the baseline of the number 2 on these coins. So these particular coins were struck at the London Mint. There were 3 different mints that produced 20-cent coins for the introduction of decimalisation. And you may be surprised to learn that only a small portion, about 10 or 11 million, were produced by the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra. The lion's share of over 30 million were produced by the Royal Mint over in London. And we also had the Royal Canadian Mint helping out with production as well. So our 20-cent pieces for decimalisation were produced at 3 different mints. But back to this interesting variety. This comes to us from the London Mint, and estimates are not definitive, so they are estimates, and it's approximately somewhere in the order of about 10,000 that were produced there. Now, if you consider that in the context of 52.8 million coins being produced, it's about 0.01% of total production that feature this die variety. So you can see why it's incredibly rare, and as a result, collectors gravitate to the strange and unusual, and they have become an incredibly popular part of collectors' folklore. You know, you hear people talk about the $1 mule. Next up in conversation, like I mentioned earlier, is, have you ever seen a Wavy baseline coin? And interestingly, they have popped up, recently. People are still finding these in their change on occasion. After, much searching is often the case. People spend weeks, months, years searching and never find a Wavy baseline 20-cent piece. So it's always exciting when people find these in their change. So let's talk price. This example here I have is very well circulated, and it would retail for around about somewhere between $300 to $350, and that would be for a low-end example of the coin. So it's been fairly well circulated. It's seen the inside of many cash registers and ended up in my hot little hands here at the Thompson's Coins headquarters. Then it's incredibly rare to see these coins in uncirculated or mint condition, and often when they are, you'll see they end up getting submitted to PCGS over in the United States. And I've done a video on PCGS explaining their function, their service, and what it is they do. But just for a brief refresher, they are a company based in the US, and they encapsulate the coins and attribute a numerical grade from 1 to 70. So that differs from our system in Australia, which is the adjective system. So we describe things in terms of fine, very fine, uncirculated, and so on, and they have a numerical system with corresponding grades. So this coin here is in mint state, and it has been attributed a grade of 64. So it's an uncirculated coin, it's in very nice condition, and it is comparable to the day it was produced. So it's understandable that someone may have identified this very early on in its life cycle and put it aside. So it's always nice to see things like this that get put aside and preserved, so future collectors can enjoy and appreciate them. And a coin like this is worth probably 10 times as much. So you're talking closer to, $3,500 for a coin like this in really, really nice condition. And also when it's been encapsulated by PCGS, which is popular for a lot of high-end collectors that want that extra level of assurance as to what they're investing in. So how did this happen? Was it intentional? Is it something that, a cheeky employee at the Mint had intentionally produced to send the collective market into, a total frenzy? The general consensus is that it was a die error. So when the die was being produced, the pressure involved in the production process resulted in that slight distorting of the baseline of the number 2. So the story is not quite as exciting as, some sort of mystery. Despite the fact that it is still a bit of a mystery, there's no definitive evidence as to how this occurred, but the general consensus is that it occurred on very few coins, and there was most likely only a very short run of these coins produced with this particular die before the issue being identified and rectified. So there you go, an incredibly cool piece of Australian collecting history. I hope you enjoyed this video, learning a little bit about one of the interesting varieties that occur in Australian coin collecting. The reason I say variety rather than error is because, to me, errors are generally something that has gone quite wrong in the production process. And this coin is still easily identifiable as a 1966 20-cent piece. It's only a very minor variance in the ordinary design. So a lot of numismatists will refer to this as a variety rather than an outright error. I'll show you an example now of what I consider to be, a real error coin, whereas this is more of a variety and a really interesting piece of the decimalisation history in Australia. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are interested at all in collecting, feel free to come on down and visit us. We're here at Shop 8 in the Boronia Mall, which is 50 Dorset Square in Boronia. We are open from Tuesday to Thursday, 10 till 4. We're also here on Saturdays from 10 till 3. If you enjoy collecting, the greatest hobby in the world, consider subscribing to the channel, or like I said, drop into the store, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot for watching.